Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Do you know, I keep looking at that starting video and thinking, that is quality production. That is quality. I'm surprised I've not been snapped up by some huge broadcasting corporation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what do you think? Hello, everyone. I know there's more than one person there, but one person has announced herself. Hello, Lynn. It's great to see you.
Hi.
I saw your comment at the end of last Sunday service. Thank you very much for that. So, it's like changing my promo today. A bit more assertive. Did anyone notice that? Did anyone see the promo? I don't know. Anyway, so today, our theme is selfishness. Yeah. Better not get all personal about this. It could end up in disaster, couldn't it? We start saying who's selfish and who's not. So anyway, hello, Revo. How are you today?
I'm all right. Bit tired.
All right,
okay.
and a bit tired. Yes, it's been a mad week.
It has.
So, I think I'm going to openly just admit that we haven't been able to do as much preparation tonight as we'd like, because lots of things happening. But, wonderful chat, this is where you come in and help us out.
Yeah, we've got no Kate tonight because she's selfishly gone out for a meal with some relatives.
How awful is... And I said I needed good justification for her absence tonight. And the fact that she's absent everything else, I said, well, okay, I should let it happen just this once. Yes, she's very good, is our Kate, so I really do pray she has a good night out.
Yes.
So come on then, let's crack on. So, you want to do the synonyms?
Yes, can do. So synonyms are egotistical, narcissistic, greedy, self-centered, narrow-minded, self-indulgent.
That's tiredness for you, isn't it? Self-indulgent. Yeah.
Ungenerous, miserly, and hoggish. That's a good word, isn't it? Hoggish.
Miserly reminds me of old miser Scrooge.
Yeah.
Scrooge-like, yeah, okay. So let's have a look at the antonyms then. So antonyms: benevolent, caring, kind, unselfish. Well, that's, yeah. Broad-minded. Not sure that. Considerate, generous, and extravagant. Extravagant. We have someone else that's joined. We have a hello from
Hey.
Dilly. Hello, my friend. Glad you could
Good
make
to
it this
see you.
evening. So, selfishness, if you've just got here, my mate. Drop message. Right. So, go on then. Let's have the dictionary definition.
Yeah, so dictionary definition is that selfishness is concerned excessively or exclusively with one's own advantage, pleasure or well-being without regard for others.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I'm sure everyone's got lots of comments about being selfish. Yeah.
Or everybody knows someone who's selfish, perhaps.
Not that we're shopping anyone or being judgmental. Actually, this is one of the things we were talking about being judgmental. We'll come to that, but we often sit in judgment, don't we, of people we consider to being selfish, and often don't actually know the motives behind it.
No.
We'll come to that in a
But
bit.
there are some people who you tend to think of as being more selfish than others, aren't there? Sort of.
Go on
Rightly
then.
or wrongly.
Go on, give me someone.
No, that's not fair.
Not a person. Give me a type.
A type is someone who always draws the conversation back to themselves, and if there's a given situation, they always seem to just think of themselves first, really, rather than anybody else in conversation.
Do you know?
And maybe that's more like narcissistic, because I suppose so it's maybe more about how somebody talks rather than about their actions, because you can be selfish in what you do, can't you? And you can be selfish in what you say.
But you can also be someone who struggles with social anxiety.
Yeah.
That talks about themselves.
That's
so
true.
Does that make them selfish?
Depends whether they do it all the time, I suppose, doesn't it?
Well, it depends on how social anxiety you've got.
Well, maybe.
I know for a fact,
Yeah.
I often talk about myself.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think... here we go. See, I know this is going to end up in sleeping in different rooms tonight. I can tell this is going to happen. Because of my being on the spectrum, I think, is that I often do get into a lot of ranty stuff about stuff that's a lot to do with me. Hang on. I think...
Bless you.
Let's put my mic back on. I probably could be heard on your mic there, but there you go. So yeah, again, it's like Oh, have I got another one? Maybe. I'll mute it if I do. I might have another one. Go on, you lead for a minute. I might be having another sneeze.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I mean, you maybe in chat you've got examples of selfishness. Kate had found us some facts about selfishness. That selfish people are more prone to worry about mental health. More prone to worry and mental health issues, which I thought was interesting. And selfishness can cause damage to both relationships and reputations, and can lead to loneliness.
See, I thought about this. Selfish people are more prone to worry and mental health issues. Sorry, is that a dog snoring? It could be.
That's interesting, that, because I don't.
When I read this, I think yesterday when I first read this, to be honest, when I read this, and I thought, prone to worry and mental health issues. Yeah. So again, is selfishness a byproduct of something else? Or is it... See, I guess this is what I think about, and I think we've talked about this before, is selfishness a byproduct of something else rather than something wrong? How do you say wrong? It's not wrong. Something negative about somebody's character, for example. I think you can come across as being selfish. I think in the promo I said we can be selfish and probably not even know about it sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that there is an element of that. That people just kind of operate within. It's almost like a framework. This is what I do, and sometimes, I went to a party once, and I just remember the food being handed out, and there wasn't much of it, and I thought that's really weird. How weird's that? I've never served that small degree of food before. Do you know what I mean? And you kind of think that's just sometimes people don't recognise a situation, or people don't do things necessarily in the same way that you might do them. When we do something like that, we'd serve a ton of food, and you kind of wonder, is that selfishness, or is it actually they're just completely unaware? And I think
it probably isn't selfishness, is it? Like you said, it's pop expectations. I just found that one about selfish people being more prone to worry a strange one, really, because I can understand that if you are sort of obsessed with worrying about yourself, then... But actually, there's a lot of people who are just worriers. So, yes, they might worry about themselves, but they'd also worry about other people all the time as well. Yeah? Oh, that's a good quote. Yeah, worry is imagination in the dark.
I like that. Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah, so it isn't... I don't know, in my head, worry isn't... the sort of person who worries a lot, or perhaps has mental health issues, it isn't necessarily just about them. I suppose that's what I mean. It seems like they worry about everything and everybody, not just themselves.
When you said you thought about prone to worry, worrying about their own existence. So, for example, let's take some really simplistic senses of being selfish, like selfish with money, selfish with what was it? It's like generous, ungenerous. So you weren't being very generous. You weren't, you're hoggish. That was that nice word you found. You kept hold of everything. Is that because you have a fear? And I think most of the time, all of this boils down to fear. I'll get that one out of the way straight away. But if there's that, so is there some sort of...
from Lynn.
Yeah, no, I know we have.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that. I know this comment is there, ready to send. Yeah. I've sent it now. You've just thrown me completely. let me direct.
Right, so I may appear to be selfish at times because I live alone. I only have to think about myself at times. However, I think it could be simply not realising you're being selfish. Yeah, that's what you were saying, Alex, isn't it? That actually, and maybe you're not. Because I think this is a huge topic, because we talked about it a bit. And sorry, you can direct if you want. I was just going to, it sort of led me into what we talked about earlier about actually what you call selfish. People you have to have some regard for yourself as well, don't you? So it's not necessarily, what you might think, oh, I'm being selfish, but surely we have to have some concern for ourselves as well, don't we? That's why it's a difficult line.
Absolutely, and I think you can become, so a good point from Leonie is that you can, in fact, there you go, this is kind of what I was about to say, but still he's just jack that in there. Fine line between selfish and self-preservation.
Yeah.
So, self-preservation might be stormed from fear. You know, you think you have to do this and stuff. And I think often people do. But going back to Lynn's comment, which I think is a really good comment that I've sort of been thinking about, is that you live your life, and we're creatures of habit as well. So you tend to do this, you tend to do that. Your days kind of become something structured that you like to live with. So this is kind of like the automatic robot within us of what we do, and you kind of think, well, are you being selfish? Or are you just sort of being? Do you know what I mean? Yeah, unless and again, is that a judgment by other people as opposed to you? So we'll come to this judgment thing in a bit as well, because that's quite important. Because I think we're often too quick to judge on what others are doing, which half the time has got nothing to do with us, and the other half of the time we've got it wrong in the first place. So it's like, okay, but I do think that you know, we have to be careful, because we sort of see that somebody isn't constantly out there handing out buckets of cash to people. You know, it's like, well, what would that be? Apart from unselfish, it should be something about grandising what you do, and that doesn't really show a sense of humility either. But anyway, it's a very good point, Lynn. You know, and you do need to look after yourself. That's important, and you need to make yourself happy, especially if you're living alone. You know, you've got to do what you need to do. Go on, Reverend. Next thing.
Sorry, am I allowed to look at... Sorry, doesn't matter.
Are you allowed to look?
So I just realised that the worry being imagination in the dark. Oh, sorry, I didn't realise it's from you, Joan. Hi, Joan. Yes, it was a great quote. Sorry, I'm just backtracking a bit there. To say hello to Joan.
By the end of this show, she's actually going to be asleep.
Yeah, I'm all right.
I'm all right.
What was I going to say as you were talking? You were talking about going back to what Priscilla was saying about the line between self-preservation and selfishness.
So you know, before you go on, I know that there's a comment, all right, now, but I'm letting you talk.
Yeah,
see what I mean?
Yeah.
You got it?
So because you're what someone might think of as a selfish action, because to be we can't be, in my book, unselfish all the time, if you like. You know, it's wonderful to be able to put others first, and of course that's something you would want. You would be wanting. You know, you'd think that people would want to do, but you know, from a self-preservation point of view, there's times when you have to take a rest or say no or whatever it is, isn't it? And someone might think, well, that person wasn't there when I wanted them to be. So you can interpret that as selfish, but actually, you know, in order for our own well-being and mental health, that sometimes you have to do it, which I don't think is being selfish. That's where the self-preservation comes in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key things is that just when you said it's like not saying no, some people find it very difficult to say no.
Yeah.
And they do, and you know, and they need to step up a gear and say no. I mean, I know someone who said to me only just this week actually said that you and I have to take time out, all right, and they're going to hound us like a dog, all right, until we do actually get a break, because they know what we're doing and what we're up to. So they said they're going to hound us, and I think there's some real truth in that. You have to take a break. You have to look after yourself. You've got to recharge. You know, and let's move on. I just want to hang on. Let's bring this one in. This is from Lynn.
So some who have never had anything in their lives may hang on to things and not be able to share and be considered selfish. Yeah, really good point, isn't it? Yes.
I think that reminds me of, I did a trip to Prague once, and I was doing like the St. Wenceslas square, and I did the big castle thing and stuff. And you know, when you go on those tour things, you meet up with a load of other people, and there's always somebody there with a big orange umbrella, your tour guide. So anyway, they went round and got everyone's money, but they didn't get mine. So that I sort of went up to her and said, "You haven't taken my money." And she looked at me astounded, and she said, "Wow, that's incredibly honest. It's like even people from the Czech Republic wouldn't have owned up to that." And I thought, yeah, but then the Czech Republic has come from, you know, how long ago? I mean, I'm thinking, how long ago did I go there? It was about 15, 20 years ago. And I'm thinking, was it really that long ago? Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, actually, you know, they were an Eastern Bloc country. Do you know what I mean? And people are still in that kind of sense of keeping hold of what they've got. Do you know what I mean? So you can kind of understand that societal mentality, if you will.
And I think it goes back to what you said before about, it's also part of it is fear and lack of trust, because that's often what makes people act in a selfish way. And I was thinking before about the pandemic, when everybody took all the toilet rolls off the shelves. So there wasn't really a shortage of toilet rolls, but there was because people couldn't stop buying them.
Do you remember when we...
So, that was a fear-induced, wasn't it? Because we had to tour loads of shops one day, didn't we, Alex? Because we hadn't panic bought.
I've got some pictures of that. It's so funny. I remember that day we was like, right, we're not panic buying, we're not going to do this. But actually, we then got to the point where we were running out and there was none in the shops, and thought, well, now everyone else is panic buying, is making us having to panic buy.
Yes.
So we checked out all the major shops, nothing. Right, we'll try some of the smaller shops,
Yeah.
And we went to a smaller shop, and they had one of the wagons outside with the racks in it where they were loading up. And Elaine went into the shop, and I'm looking at this back of this wagon, and I can see a well-known brand of toilet roll in this thing, and I phoned and said, there's some on this wagon, they're bringing it in, right? So it was like stealthy toilet roll purchasing. That was funny.
Yeah. So, but again, it's fear, isn't it? It's like when you don't trust things to be provided for you or other people, then it makes people do the hog thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's that? I think that truly selfish people are not aware of being selfish. They think this is normal behaviour to put themselves first. People who say they're being selfish, see next comment, are usually aware of others and care about them. Yeah, I think you're probably right there, Joan. There's probably a bit of self-awareness, isn't there? And because, there are people, I'm sure we all know one or two people who are, who you just know would always just think of themselves first, or seem to just have this persona that they're always just doing what's right for them and thinking about themselves, and even in situations will always draw things back to themselves and how it affects them. And maybe that's something to do with upbringing. Maybe, I don't know, just personality.
I actually think some people are just blissfully unaware.
Yeah, well, that's what Joan's saying, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's just the way they are.
She's absolutely right. So I used to know someone who could quite happily wander up the street, swinging around backwards and forwards and that, all jolly and all that sort of stuff, and would almost walk into people completely oblivious of her own environment. And you thought, I wish I was like that. I'm what I think. I'm always thinking. I'm always analysing, and I think it's a bit of a curse, if you will. I think I'm cursed with constant thought and analysing stuff, and some people don't do that. I think some people are completely oblivious. It's like, I'll just jump the queue without even recognising there's a queue.
Yeah.
Taking the biggest slice of cake because it's the biggest slice of cake.
Yeah.
And just happy going along in their life, and you kind of look at them and think, how can you? And you kind of think, because they don't know.
No, well, they just think that's just what I think sometimes people just think that's what everybody does. I remember, it just reminded me.
Carry on talking.
When we were at Spring Harvest once, so we've been there for a few days at this Butlins camp, evangelical Christian thing. And on the day of leaving, there were a limited number of trolleys to get your cases from where you lived to the car park.
There wasn't a limited number. It's just that where they were stalled was right
miles
at the entrance.
Away. Yeah.
And where everyone was staying was miles away. So throughout the time we were there, they'd all been put back in the trolley park. So of the few trolleys that were kicking about,
so people had trudged quite a way to get their trolley and bring it back ready to load it up. So will you carry on, Alex, because you were the one who saw it, weren't you?
So I went off and got a trolley, but then I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll pick up 3. If I get 3, then I know some other people in the block were in. So as I put them underneath the sort of stairwell that went up on the outside, some bloke, I think, came out, and I'm not even sure, was I? Yeah, I think it was probably early on in my faith, and some bloke came out and just sort of like hinched a trolley, and I said, that's not very Christian of you, is it? Yeah, like that, because that's what I'm like, and And because he's just robbing someone else's trolley, and you knew that the trolleys was a big deal. It was a big deal. You had people that went the night before to go and get trolleys in preparation for the following day so they could get away. It was one of those nightmares. Go on, read Lynn's comment. Let's see what that says.
So, as a child, if we didn't share our sweets, for example, they were taken off us and given to others. Also, we're taught to do and help others, therefore giving of our time, etc., which seem normal for us. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think
it can be taught, isn't it?
There is a teaching there's a value system here, morality, ethics, all that sort of stuff of what you do. I think that's a very good point.
I think, just as an aside, that driving is one big example. Isn't it? You know, when people don't let you out or deliberately block the bit, or just no thought has gone into what someone in front of you just did, or I just think that's just some people drive really selfishly, don't they? And we all do it when we're in a bit of a hurry and are not thinking as well. So it's just one of those examples.
It's a good example of someone not listening.
Remember the being yeah.
There's someone not listening there. Didn't we talk about that 5 minutes ago? Absolutely.
Well, yeah.
I remember
That's why we had to go on the hunt, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there anything we've missed? There was an agreement of something you said before from Lynn. I'll put. Oh, hang on. I've missed one from Priscilla yesterday. That's self-care.
It must mean being selfish is okay at times. I think that's true. I think it is, because the times that you have to be, because otherwise, whatever. We have to legitimately look after our own interests sometimes, don't we?
I'm only teasing, mate.
You missed the most exciting part of the evening.
Bit,
Alex and mine's quest for some toilet rolls in pandemic.
Quest for toilet rolls. I actually think I put a post up on Facebook of Elaine coming back to the car with toilet rolls, and I just said we'd scored. Do you know what I mean?
It was just ridiculous, like one of those films, because it was only a small shop, and as you went in, the guy said, "What are you here for?" Someone said milk, and somebody said something else. I said toilet rolls. It was like, this furtive thing of we're all collected there waiting for this van to unload.
I'm actually,
with the scarce items.
I think I know where the photo is for that. I'm going to grab it quick. I've got to show it. It went on Facebook anyway. Yeah. Where is it? Carry on talking.
Yeah. Well, no, I haven't got anything else more to say on that, except that given the right environment, I suppose. I suppose what I'm leading on to, I think that is there not something instinctive in us about being selfish? When you look at, how we're made and how selfish, toddlers are because of where they are. Because it's a bit of this self-preservation thing, I think, to some extent, is in all of us, isn't it? So there's, given a certain set of circumstances, I think we'd all be selfish, wouldn't we?
Yes.
So, just being realistic about it, I think, like going back to what Lynn was saying, is often a learned thing, isn't it, to share, and why we shouldn't be selfish. And do you know what I mean? I think it's perhaps, the way we've been made, because in times of scarcity, you sort of need that instinct to survive, don't you? We were talking, Alex, earlier, weren't we, about just one example of that. At the end of the Second World War, children who'd been in the concentration camp, probably some of them were sent to Windermere, to this place, and they were very young, some of them as well, and children who'd been through this terrible experience and lost parents. And when I watched it, one of the things that struck me, that for the first few days at least, and the children went down to breakfast, and there was an abundance of food. They could have had anything they wanted, but they were all taking stuff and taking it upstairs and hiding it for the next meal, because it was so inbuilt in them that they had to do that to survive. So that's just about that instinct.
It reminds me of I don't know if anyone's an Eddie Murphy fan. I used to watch what was it? I can't remember. Anyone remember the film where they take it's Dan Aykroyd? Is it Dan Aykroyd? Yeah, Dan Aykroyd. I think it's Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. Trading Places. That was it. Trading Places. And Eddie Murphy gets he gets pulled off the street as this homeless guy, and then put into this. It's basically these two big rich men have this bet for $1 to say, can they take someone who's really poor and a degenerate and probably a criminal, and trade places with somebody who's really wealthy and turn the roles round. So they take Eddie Murphy and put him in this house and say, "This is your house." And as he's wandering around being told all this stuff, he's picking stuff up and putting it in his pockets because he's thinking, "I'm going to rob this," because it hasn't sunk in that this is all his. It all belongs to him. But yeah, I get it. It's that people don't recognise that stuff. And you are right. I had a look for that image. I can't find it.
No.
It used to be on my phone, so I've just checked my phone. It wasn't on there, so I've obviously got rid of it. But yeah, I think in the circumstances. There was just self-preservation.
Yeah, so when we're put in that position, that's often what we do. Yeah.
Have you ever been at an event or something and you've grabbed some stuff and brought it home? For me, so yeah, I've got some for Alex. You know.
What, freebies, you mean? Yeah?
Freebies. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's the instinct to take the... I don't know what it is. Is that being selfish or just being whatever? I think when it's selfish, usually when we have the definition, it's something that affects other people, isn't it? You know, it's not just you doing something for yourself, because sometimes that's fine. It's when it has an adverse effect on somebody else.
You were at a buffet at church, for example, and you grabbed a load of sarnas and some chicken drumsticks and brought them back. If you're taking the food out of the mouths of others, rather than actually,
then that would have been very selfish.
These are like just eat 'em ups. To get that down you, because it was only going to go in the bins, probably different.
Yeah.
Go on, grab that, and then we'll do. Then what we'll do is we'll do the switch, Elaine. So you can read that one.
Yeah, so Lynn's saying, I think there's an innate mechanism, selfishness, in order to survive. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it is in us, because when the chips are down, you know, however people act normally, I think that there's always going to be a tendency for that.
I suppose the level then, on that basis, is that at what level are the chips down? You know, so when I consider the chips down, might be slightly higher than when you do. So my selfishness kicks in. But I do think that there's a difference between survival, if you will, and selfishness.
Yes, there is. Yeah, definitely, because survival's different, because it's sort of doing. Well, what you perceive anyway, you really need to do, isn't it? Whereas being selfish can just be a way of being, isn't it? When when you're in a land of plenty and you don't need to do it, you're still doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. See, when I pointed that out to that bloke at Spriggy, and I said, "It's not very Christian, is it?" I think he probably knew that. And probably thought he'd get away with it.
Nicking somebody's trolley.
Nicking someone's trolley. And I think there's a bit of that. And I think there's also a bit that sometimes you can call someone out for being selfish, and I go, "Ooh. Yeah," and they don't really realise.
Yeah.
You know, they might not even realise. Right, shall we do the magical switch
over?
Yeah,
so shall I read Lynn's comment?
Sorry.
You've put it up.
I have, and we haven't read it. Go on.
So Lynn says, I was amazed over lockdown to see people stockpiling, etc., who otherwise are actually selfless normally. Yeah. Yeah, my parents had the biggest cupboard of toilet rolls you've ever seen, didn't they? Yes, they did. They were the first to, my mum was the first to stockpile, I have to say.
And a pantry full of bread.
Yeah. So, but in common with loads of people. So.
But you know, I don't know. We might be
fear of not having enough.
But we might be facing a similar situation this coming year, aren't we?
Well, that's
what's
true.
What's going to happen in the winter?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And the other thing is, we've become so reliant, haven't we? We're no longer self-sufficient as much as we used to be. That's an interesting point. So I'm going into survival mode now. I'll be out the back building my own air raid shelter next week. Right, let's do the switch then. Let's start getting more godly about our conversation.
Yes. So what does faith... What difference does faith make to whether we're selfish or not? Does it make any difference?
Oh, there is a comment from Joan coming.
Oh, right. Talking about refugees grabbing food for tomorrow, it fits in with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah.
Maslow's, sorry, did I miss something?
No, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like starting at the, with the basics of things that we need, like food and water. There's a hierarchy of things that we need.
Is that got something to do with shoes, then a bicycle, then a motorbike, then a car, then a van, all of that sort of stuff in the sense of progress? I've heard a thing about self-sufficiency and need with regards to how people can generate their own income and how they can become self-sufficient surviving. So I remember the fact, when you look at the poorest of the poor, there's no shoes, but the step up the ladder is that they've got a pair of shoes. Then they've got a form of transport, which is a bicycle. Then they've gone from that form of transport to a motorbike or something. I'm wondering if it's anything to do with that. So Maslow, I'll look at that because I'm interested to know that. I'll look that up. Anyway, go for it, Revo.
Yeah, well, interesting to see what chat thinks about whether having faith makes a difference. I mean, there's quite a lot in the Bible about...
Well, clearly it didn't to the bloke at Spring Harvest, did it? So,
no.
But that's the point, isn't it? And that's the thing that I'm here to debunk the fact that being a Christian makes you awesome. I mean, it makes you awesome, but
it can do.
It still makes you sin. It doesn't make you sinful, but you're still sinful. So how does it make you better?
Maybe it makes us more aware of whether we're being. Going back to some people being completely unaware. That if we truly have faith and follow, does that not change how we think about things? In Kate's wonderful research, she gave us a verse in Philippians 2:4 that says, "Let each of you look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others," which is an interesting one because actually it's what we're saying is a legitimising of saying, it's okay to look to your own interests, but it's actually about the biggest piece of cake theory, I suppose, isn't it? So if you want a piece of cake, but if I take the big one, there's going to be none left for anybody else on a very simple level.
It's still a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, here's a more spiritual comment from Joan.
Good. Yeah, we know that God provides all our basic needs, so we don't have to be selfish. God is abundantly generous. He is indeed. Yeah, and the Bible tells us He will provide for us.
See,
but do we always believe that, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah, what's that like in practice?
See, I think the reality check is that for us, we're incredibly blessed in the country we live in. All right, and we say God provides our basic needs. And I know in places of substantial poverty, let's talk about African nations and things like that, where people die because they don't get the basic needs. So it's different now. I'm not sure. I mean, okay, there's famine. That's one element, and then there's corruption. So when you've got someone corrupt who is, withholding things like food, medicines, and stuff like that, it's one of the biggest problems there was in Africa. Certainly the non-famine days. But yeah, I kind of think about that and think, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? So God provides all our basic needs, but doesn't provide others all their basic needs in certain circumstances. I have to throw that out there to say, how does that work then? You're thinking, I'm too tired for that. Yeah.
Yeah, but does it mean that we have to be selfish, though? I suppose that's what we're trying to talk about, get to, isn't it? Does it mean that we have to be selfish with what we've got? I suppose because it links to, as everything does, doesn't it, to trust as well, that we trust in God to provide. Then we don't always have to be thinking about how we can provide for ourselves. It's where our focus is, isn't it?
I suppose the question for me is that often when I see things that aren't working, they're not working out right, I sense it's actually a lesson. There's something to be gained from that thing, call it travesty, tragedy, whatever. So let's go back to just going back to my little elevation of that. God provides all our basic needs. God does, I suspect, provide all our basic needs. We're just not very good at sharing them. And if you think of things like Ethiopia during the famine, and Bob Geldof when he did Live Aid, that was an exceptional sense of generosity that happened, and a lot of things that were done for people in those poorer nations. And you can't help but say, so hang on, is it that God is providing, or is God teaching the rest of the world to be actually much more sympathetic to other people in the because this is where it gets bigger and much more spirally out of control when you start the consideration of it, is that should God just be dropping manna out of the sky for the people in Ethiopia, is in the sense that, he did with these Israelites. So, or is it actually us that have a responsibility to provide because God provides for us? How does this work? Do you know where I'm going with this?
It's a big question, isn't it? Because I suppose we live in a selfish world in that there's a lot to come round, isn't there? But we don't always share it.
Someone's on the same wave.
Yeah, so we have a world of abundance in humanity, which it's humanity that doesn't share. So I'm going to say, if you look at the big picture, there's plenty, isn't there, to go round. But because of the way, because of lots of reasons about whatever, how our world is ordered, that actually some people have huge amounts and some people have nothing, which isn't right, is it?
Yeah.
I've been in situations where people are in abject poverty, but they've shared what they have with others.
Do has anyone seen those YouTube videos where somebody kind of gives $100 or something to a homeless person, and then they watch to see what they do next? And they go off and you think, they're going to go down the grog shop and buy a ton of beer. And they've gone off and bought a load of food and then gone to other homeless people and shared it with them. See,
and there's the thing in it, for being biblical, there's the widow who shared her put a tiny amount in the offering. But
she put a copper coin or something and people were laughing at her.
Because she gave far more proportionally than she had, So I wonder if the sort of richer we get, the more selfish we get, isn't it? That you sort of, I don't know.
Well,
maybe if you've got a lot, that you sort of lose that sensitivity to others. I mean, that shouldn't be right, should it? But isn't it a fact also that often churches, for example, in richer areas are not as generous proportionately in giving as those in poorer areas and richer areas. So it seems to be a thing.
I wouldn't necessarily point out churches specifically. If I want to put a slap across people, the Christians are always in the same line of fire. Do you know what I mean? Because Christians, although I agree, I agree. There are bad Christians, all right? There are good non-Christians, all this stuff. There is a reality across the spectrum as well. What Christianity teaches is another thing, and the stuff that we obviously talk about and what the faith all the time. But I wouldn't single out churches, but you're right, there are wealthy people that do amazing things and there's wealthy people that don't. And that's fine. Let's just I've got a few comments. So let's
get them. So these have been people and kids of a really strong faith, really humbling to witness. I agree with you, Lynn. I mean, we've got, as you know, on Unleashed Broadcast, we've got this international link with the orphanage in Kenya. It's actually a really humbling relationship. Because they have absolutely nothing at all. And, it really puts it in perspective, that they have so little and yet are, generous of spirit and things. But,
we had a really big donation, didn't we, just before Christmas last year. And they sent out loads of videos. They managed to hire a mixing desk and do a proper Christmas party, get the kids all presents. It was absolutely amazing. So let's just bring this next one in.
One or two. The richest people in the world could end world hunger. That's an amazing thought, isn't it? Is that true?
No, I don't think that's true. I know the essence behind what you're saying is being, yes, fundamentally the money that the one or two of the richest people in the world could end world hunger, but there'd have to be a much bigger process than that, just putting the money in and stuff. There's a whole social mentality deal that has to be dealt with. I mean, we talk about, Jesus said, there's always going to be poverty. Yeah, it's one of the things it's in Scripture. You're right. We could do as a people, we could do a huge amount better.
Yes.
As a huge amount better, and I think we could probably do a huge amount better now. Yeah, and I know that there's some really wealthy people out there that do a huge amount already. But yeah, so I think the key thing is let's figure out the way that we can solve these problems of poverty. So let's bring Joan in here. Okay. Sorry, do you have a comment? Go on.
No, let's have Joan's comment and we'll carry on. But isn't that to do with selfish governments and corrupt companies grabbing what they don't need? What I'm saying is God provides for everyone in the world. You just said all of this. Yeah. Yes, he does.
See, isn't that annoying? It's annoying, isn't it? You sort of say everything, just someone's typing it.
But you're right, yes, selfish government. Whatever, there's lots of reasons, aren't there, why you can't type fast enough. You're on the phone, Joan, really, don't we?
Normally Joan.
Maybe we should change this.
Here's one that's interesting.
Poor in goods or poor in spirit. Oh, is you going back to, I think Joan's meaning what we said about Jesus saying the poor will always be with us, whether he was actually meaning the poor materially, or was he meaning the poor in spirit?
Well, I suppose, I'm going to say this off, and I think you're always going to have people who are homeless. You're always going to have people who are homeless. There's more to it than just the sense of people, and I'm not saying that homeless people are, always people that have got addictions and things like that. You could lose your job, you could come out of a bad relationship and end up homeless. So there's a multitude of reasons why people end up homeless.
Yeah, well,
I think you're always going to end up with a sense of people in poor situations. Well, I don't know how. Hang on a sec. I don't know how you actually properly deal with that, because one of the problems we have are people through greed, will try and abuse a system. All right. I just think of the benefit system. That must be an absolute nightmare to try and manage. Like, how can you vet every single person who's asking for benefits? How can you do that right? It's like never been done. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand the sense that whatever seems to happen when things go wrong, it's always the poorest people that suffer. There is. But there are always people who are selfish that will screw up the systems that try and put into place for those people that are so needy. It's such a knot of convoluted mess. It's very, very hard to do. Another one from Lynn.
God has provided for all. There's such an unequal distribution of wealth because of the selfishness of individuals, and world governments so agree. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think in terms of sort of our faith as well, if you think about, I mean, for me, I think, selfishness is not in accord, is it, with Jesus' example of self-giving love, isn't it? And the focus of our lives, if you follow him, is him and not us, is it? So for me, that means that selfishness can't be something that we strive not to be, isn't it? But I think we have to develop. I mean, about being taught, I think faith again, it has to be developed, and we have to keep asking about it, don't we? And praying about it.
Here's a very good point, I think. I think it is. Homelessness is way more complicated than simple poverty or addiction. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think this is some of the things that leads to poverty as well. Systems. How is it that you can get benefits necessarily if you don't have an address? This is one of the things you hear about, problems with that. So how are you working if you're homeless? All of this stuff is a big, absolute mess. So people can end up in states of poverty because of circumstance. And I think there's certain situations, because it's not easily captured to be resolved, that we're always going to have this sort of problem. So when we talk about poor in goods, poor in spirit, is that a correction for me that that's what Jesus is talking about when you're always going to have people, you're always going to have poverty?
Well, we don't know. He may have meant both, but yeah, we always have the poor. What he's saying is you will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me, is what he's saying. So he may well have.
And I think that's the point, is that we're in this situation where we're always, it's never going to stop whilst I'm alive, that I have a responsibility to help people less fortunate than me. And often, and I'm like the other Christian I need to slap, I'm often not doing as much as I should. Although I did go into I think I can tell, because it doesn't matter, not that I'm sponsored by anyone. I always think about what you can say and what you can't say on YouTube and stuff. So I went to Morrison's. As I went in, there was a bloke sat outside, this is the other week, and I said, are you on the streets? And he went, yeah, I am. So can I get you anything? And he said, yeah, a bottle of Coke. And that was it. And I said, yeah, all right, no worries. So I went in, and I was about 15 minutes doing my shop and all that sort of stuff. And I come out with a bottle of Coke and some pies and sandwiches for him. And I thought, well, there you go, you can have that. Anyway, gone. Oh, what am I going to do with all this now? And I saw some bloke doing the trolleys, and I said, oh, what happened to the bloke? He said, I think he got on the bus. He's got on the bus and gone. And I thought, so, yeah, that was interesting. So I try sometimes, I don't try all the time, but sometimes, again, balance, isn't it? What would happen if every time I went out and saw a homeless person, I went and bought them 10 quid's worth of shopping? I suppose if there wasn't that many homeless people, I could probably do it, but there's often too many. Here's one in from Joan.
There are benefit cheats among the poor, and the rich have tax havens by cheating the system. Yeah, there are always people who are going to abuse whatever the way of life is, isn't it? So you know,
I always think when it comes to things like that, everyone starts screaming at the government because of the failings in the government. I actually think the government's there to try and govern. There's something fundamentally wrong with society that allows that sort of stuff to happen that I don't think the government can actually law. You know, how can you put in, you know, they try and put some of these weird laws in. It doesn't matter what government, I'm not specifying, you know, red, blue, green, whatever. I'm just saying it's almost an impossible task because of the very nature of what the government are trying to govern. When you've got selfishness and greed abundant, and it is abundant.
It is,
you know?
yeah, definitely.
It is so abundant, you know. Go on,
So
sorry.
what difference does faith make? What difference does faith make? Hey, did you enjoy the pies and Coke, Alex?
No comment.
Coke's still in the fridge. That's all I'm saying.
I'll say the Coke's still in the fridge. The pies aren't.
No.
Well, I couldn't waste them either. And do you know what? This is no lie. I actually drove round to see if I could find somebody else to give them to. And I was gone for about half an hour, driving around Wallasey trying to find somebody else to give them. I couldn't find anyone. I tried outside to find some other shops and I couldn't find anyone. Go on, Elaine. We're not. I don't know. But there's probably stuff that you should be saying.
Well, no. It's the conversation's going where it's going, and it's great. It's you know, we're really thinking about, you know, selfishness and what it means. And I suppose, you know, from a faith point of view, I mean, all the things we've been talking about, I suppose it struck me. I mean, part of it is because proper selfishness always has an impact on someone else. That's a definition, isn't it? So that's what we're talking about when we talk about, you know, people fiddling the tax or maybe abusing the benefits, whatever it is. It has an effect on other people, doesn't it? So is there something about being Christian that we need to you know, be speaking out against, because that's not just, is it? Some of the things are not just that are happening, and if they're, you know, and how do we do that? I suppose I think that's one of the things I think about faith is that we need to speak up for those who are less fortunate, don't we? For example, so if we see things happening because of selfishness, but you know, maybe that is something I think that we can. Drawn into.
I think there's some fundamental problems that we all have though that I'm not quite sure how we can resolve without a significant, huge change of heart in society.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. There are wonderful people out there of faith, of all faiths and of no faiths, that do wonderful things that are charitable, giving, and all this sort of stuff. And yet there are a lot of people, and that'll be even people like. Joan pointed out, you know, you've got people that abuse that are wealthy, you get people that abuse that are not wealthy, and you have vice versa, you people that are giving that aren't wealthy and people that are giving that are wealthy. Yeah. You know, and
how do we address it?
How do we really solve a problem like that? You know, I mean, I would like to believe that if everyone started looking upwards a bit more, if you get what I mean. And being careful about stuff and thinking about stuff. Yeah, it's almost like it's a collaboration on mankind's on a mankind level. It's almost like actually everyone's got to be in to win it, or it's never going to work. How does that work? Is it something we have to accept?
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's easier to talk about what we need to do on an individual basis, I suppose, as followers, isn't it? I mean, this is the verses in most of the Gospels, where Jesus said, if anyone wants to become his follower, let them deny themselves and put their cross. On an individual level, it's about our focus just being on following him, not on ourselves, isn't it? And so if we do that, then that does affect how we think about things, I think. You know, and that's why, and I think the other thing I thought about was about prayer as well, that, you know, it affects our motive, because we can be selfish in prayer as well, can't we, as Christians? You know, of course, there's still all this tendency to selfishness, but actually, you know, if we're really focusing on following Jesus and in prayer, it's about what motives we ask for, isn't it?
Is that a bit like when I'm not sure if I can tell jokes like this anymore. Some people say it might not be politically correct. I'll try and detract from the nation that it was associated. So a bloke, or can I actually say a man? No, I can. So a bloke prayed up to God and said, God, let me win the lottery. See, it's that kind of selfishness, isn't it?
Yeah.
And God said back to him, all right, such and such a name, but you've got to at least buy a ticket first. That was the joke. Anyway. But yeah, we do pray selfishly. And you're right, a lot of it comes down to motive.
Yeah.
What are we praying for? Is it for us? Is it for somebody else? Is it for God's glory?
Well, yeah, I mean, that as Christians, our lives are meant to be focused on that, isn't it? So, and I think that's a difference faith does and should make. I think is in the mindset, isn't it? Because it doesn't mean we're going to suddenly stop doing anything selfish, isn't it? But I think it makes us more aware and conscious of the things that we, I think it's a change of mindset. The closer you get to, the more you deeply go into faith and knowing Jesus, isn't it? It becomes a change of mindset where you think less about. It's easy to. It's changed me a bit anyway. It becomes more automatic, I suppose, to think about, other people. I mean, we talked in the Humility Week again, didn't we, about putting others first, and I suppose the basic commandment to love God and your neighbour is all putting self on the back seat, isn't it? And putting God first and other people first.
Let's just bring this one
on a
in.
very basic level.
Bring this one in. I want to tell people about the funeral tomorrow as well before we finish today. So we've got about 5 minutes left, 4.5 minutes left. So
I think faith does make you more aware of your actions, etc. It does affect our behaviour to others in all aspects of life. Yeah, definitely. I think so. I mean, as we get to know Jesus, I think it changes your heart. It changes the way you are. If because...
Well, it makes you ask the fundamental questions. Because I think that with faith, it's not just about, which is why Scripture's so important, and why the best book in the world is the Bible. Because the fact of the matter is that you're called out on your behaviour. You're called out on your thoughts. You're called out on everything.
Yeah.
It's all right to say, well, I believe in a higher being, if you will. But that does come with some bad news in the sense of, but that means there's some responsibility. And the whole thing about being a Christian is it comes with responsibility. It comes with an understanding to be who you are, where you are, and why you're here. And I think why you're here is fundamentally is that, God gave me this life. This was my purpose. So it's important. That's why I'm very Bible-centred, to be fair. So anyway, just before we move on, before I forget, because this would be rubbish if I did, let's drop that message. So those of you here who knew Trish Williamson, who is a community member of the Unleashed Broadcast Church community, her funeral is tomorrow. And Elaine will be presiding at that funeral tomorrow. Just to let you know, it will be live streamed, and I will be putting the details for this. So the funeral starts at 3:00 tomorrow, and I'll be putting the live stream details for that in Facebook. So I think everyone here, at least who knew Trish, is on Facebook. So the details will be there. If not, if you're here and you want to know the details because you're not on but knew Trish, you can email me alex.white@unleashedbroadcast.com. alex.white@unleashedbroadcast.com if you want me to send you those details. So yeah, I'll just want to make sure we got that out.
Yeah.
So a couple more comments. Let's bring this one in from Joan.
It doesn't help we've moved away from our faith. Prayers are no longer said at the beginning of Parliament. It doesn't have to be denominational. Just look how many different nations. Yeah, they're not said at the beginning of Parliament. They are said sometimes in government. What was I watching recently? I mean, it's probably just a Christian thing, but all the MPs were there, including the ones that say they're not Christian.
Yeah, wasn't there something something recently, wasn't there?
And people pray. But no, you're right, and they used to be said, didn't they, in the past? I think you're right, because from our individual thing, we can follow our faith and follow Jesus and pray. But actually, when we're talking about the big picture, isn't it, of being unselfish, if you like, you'd need governments to be doing that, wouldn't you? Governments to be following Christ for for it perhaps to have any effect in that way.
There's an additional bit to the end of this sentence, so just read the last sentence of that.
Sorry, it doesn't have to be denominational, just look at how many different nations paid respect to the Queen for her commitment to her people and God, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And Lynn agrees with that. It's very concerning.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I think, actually, in a bizarre way, the Queen's death has had a good effect, hasn't it? Because it's drawn attention to it.
I think the interesting thing is that as a very cosmopolitan country now of different faiths and stuff, it's quite difficult, isn't it? Because people sort of say, well, how... So, and I suppose inclusiveness and things like that, you know, you've got people of different faiths that are in Parliament or in politics and stuff, you know. How do you do that? How does that get managed? You know, I don't know. I don't want to get into it.
Well, we can pray for government, which we always do. Pray for governments, but it would be great if it was more like that.
Oh, here you go. Yeah. This is the problem. This is why Joan has to break up her things.
My comments section only have 200 words for comments.
200 characters, probably, not 200 words.
Characters, probably
200 characters.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. Well, we might have to just bring you in.
I've got to say, really, we need to. We may need to try and change this so we've got people in.
We've been thinking about this, and tell us your thoughts. We're thinking about actually having somebody come and join us for a show, rather than get people to dial in. I'm trying to think about this as the platform kind of grows. Is, you know, that we invite somebody to be on What the Faith each given week. That would be the idea. It'd be nice to have a guest who can be joining Elaine and I to talk about that topic, and I think that guest should be a member of our community. So if people are down with that, you know, maybe we can get some other people that might not be community based, but just someone who might be, I guess, a bit like-minded like us, who might want to join in the conversation as we think and look to develop What the Faith over the coming time. Anyway, Revo, we've hit the 8 o'clock.
Right.
So the people I know we've got here: Joan, Lynn, Bristilli. I think that's all we've got this week. We know Kate's having tapas, so she might be sneakily watching on her phone. I doubt it. No. She'll be eating those little those potato things that you get. I don't know. Braffus, or whatever it's called. I can't remember what is it.
Patatas bravas.
I don't know, something like that. Tapas. Anyway, do you want to lead us out with some prayer?
Yes, let's have some prayer. Yeah. So Heavenly Father, we thank you again for this chance to meet together, to talk about some of these important subjects of life, Lord, and what you say and your word says about them, Lord. So thank you for the conversation. And thank you for Joan and Pristilli and Lynn, Lord, and for all their contributions. And there's lots for us to think about, Lord, so I just ask you to filter our thoughts and help us to hold on to the important things, Lord, and what you wanted to say to us about these things.
Oh, and anyone else who might be watching us on Catch Up.
Oh, yes, anyone else watching on Catch Up, we just pray that you just speak into all our hearts, Lord, of your will for all this.
Help us to not be selfish, Lord.
Yes.
Help us to think.
And we just ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Right. Okay. Yes, as you know, we're not around tomorrow doing the funeral. Look on Facebook if you want that link, if you want to be able to watch the funeral live. And beyond that, have a great couple of days, and we will see you all on Sunday. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
God bless. Bye.
Bye.